12:30 p.m. Tuesday, March 31st. I'm calling to order the Public Works Committee. Roll call and determination of quorum, please, Brenda.
Estes. Doyle. Roberts. Here. Scott.
She's absent.
Wright.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. I have a motion to adopt the agenda as published.
So moved.
Made by John, seconded by Brad. Any comments, questions from the group? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This being a time for general public comment, is there anyone in the audience that's not on the agenda that wishes to speak to anything about Public Works? Not. We will move on to consent items 1 through 37. Public comments from items 1 through 37. I have no speaker request forms. Are there any speaker request forms, Brenda? Any items from 1 through 37 that wish to be pulled by members of the committee? Motion was made by Brad to approve items 1 through 37, second by John Roberts. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is accepted. 1 through 37 is approved. Non-consent items, items 38 through 42. Any public comment on any items from the public on items 38 through 42? Yes, sir, you may speak. Please identify yourself for the record and the camera, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ron Weifenbach from 4153 Augusta Drive in Rapid City. And I'm here to talk about item number 38 again, returning the Fairmont site to some use over there on Fairmont Street. When I was on the council before, back in, I believe it was 08 or 09, somewhere in there, that site was slated to be rebuilt. And the city of Rapid City took on a Junior Olympic softball tournament, which was to be hosted at Fitzgerald Stadium. In regards to that waste site that was on the west side of Rapid City was in some need of repair. So the two council people in Ward 1 and 2, which used that waste site over there in South Rapid, reluctantly, but they forewent that rebuilding of that site to allow them to rebuild the West Rapid site, with the understanding that the South Rapid site would be rebuilt to some level. The city of Rapid City or the garbage sanitation department has a very limited amount of money invested in that site, if any. Maybe, I think, after speaking with Mr. Wright, I think that they had done some fencing and stuff just to kind of help with some of the debris that's there. But since I've been back on the council, I've had numerous calls from constituents in that area that would like to see their site back. They are ratepayers, and it does service lots of Ward 2, almost all of Ward 1, and it eliminates them from having to drive down the Highway 79 with a load if they just have whatever recycling materials they want to have. But on several occasions, I witnessed the chaos that happens in that front entrance on Highway 79 at the landfill. And I believe that Carl is here today to talk a little bit about some of that information that I brought up last time. But I was just out there again this weekend. And if you're an elderly person or somebody who doesn't have the means, like a dump trailer or a pickup truck, you're going to suffer the consequences. Coming back from the dump, there was a guy on the side of the highway picking up his Ralph bags because they fell off his trailer. Because you're getting down Highway 79, the wind blows harder, the speed limit's faster, it's just a lot farther to carry your goods. And then once you get there, if you get there during a time of when they're busy and they got their big trucks moving in and out, it gets to be very chaotic for people that just want to do some recycling. And in Ward 1 and Ward 2 don't have that ability just to go down to their neighborhood recycling center anymore. I think that there had been mention made at one time of $450,000 to redo the site. My estimates are much lower than that. I estimate it to be what it is, but I know it's not anywhere near $450,000. And I believe when this site originally went out, there was some support to change it to a limited site to make it maybe not as aggressive as it is now. So I'm asking that the council reconsider this and reconsider the fact that these are the landfill is a ratepayer supported operation. That means that you pay the rate for the services you receive. And those people in that corner aren't receiving services. And the argument will be made, well, they can drive down to Highway 79, down to the dump. But I would venture to say that that's not a very good argument when you're there and you're an elderly person, which very concentrated in that area, use that recycling site. So I understand that staff supports this in some ways. So I would appreciate that if we just made a motion to move it forward to the council. Even if you make it without recommendation, we can have the conversation on the council, because the conversation keeps going back to putting the burden on me to prove that it's necessary. I don't believe that's my job to do that. I've looked into it. I'm listening to my constituents in that ward, as does my ward mate. And I believe the other two ward members who aren't represented today. If we can move this forward, I think we can get this done at a reasonable cost. And it's, you know, it's calculated into the rate payments. You guys made a rate reduction not that many years ago. So I'm assuming that there's plenty of money to be able to handle something like this. So thank you. I'll be open for questions, obviously, or whatever.
Thank you, Ron. And please, if you can, stay by. No other further public comments on these items? If not, item number 38 is to return the Fairmont Recycle Site for South Dakota for Rapid City, South Dakota, at the request of Alderman Ron Weifenbach. Is there a motion to discuss or to consider? Go ahead, Brad.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll make a motion to send to council without recommendation.
Second.
Thank you. Made by Brad Estes, seconded by John. Any discussion? Brad, you still have the mic or the floor if you wish. Okay, anybody, Terry or your staff, would you like to address this at this time or wait till Monday night?
I think we can wait till Monday night.
Anyone on the council request information from staff at this time? Now, we have a motion to send it to council without recommendation before us. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Goes to council without recommendation. Thank you, Ron. Item number 39 is a policy regarding replacement or reimbursement of damaged sprinkler systems within the public right-of-way. This was referred from the November 3rd, 2014 City Council meeting and continued from the March 10th, 2015 Public Works meeting. Do I have a motion? I have one prepared. I was not expecting to chair, if I may read. The motion is to direct staff to develop a written policy regarding the replacement or reimbursement of damaged sprinkler systems within the public rights-of-way, similar to the public policy of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and return to the first Public Works meeting in May. That's my motion. Seconded by John. The motion is before us to send this to council with that amendment, or excuse me, that motion. Any discussion? If not, those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item number 40 is a report on requests from skateboard enthusiasts to install lighting at the New York Street skate park. Mr. Beegler.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is an item that came up at the last council meeting when there were a number of skateboarders and both kids and adults that addressed council. They had a request for the city to look at the New York Street skate park with regard to lighting of that facility. Currently, there is no lighting at that facility other than street lights and parking lot lights, but there are no lights that are for the skate park itself. This is something that we decided that would be a very good idea to take a look at. We met with one of the adults who spoke at the last meeting, and he shared his concern that the lighting would be requested both for security purposes and to also extend the skating experience a little later into the evening. You know, our winters are such that kids could be out there using the skate park almost year round, and in the wintertime especially, it gets dark so early that lighting there would at least extend the use of that site, and also in the summer as well. So we met with Jacob Hladish to discuss this, and then we also met with West Plains Engineering, who's going to be working up kind of an estimate for us, so what it would take to provide lighting for that site. We will take that information to our Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for their May meeting, and at that time we'll discuss it with that committee and plan on what goes next. Obviously, we do not have a funding source identified at the moment, but that's all something that we'll be discussing with our Parks and Rec Board.
Comments or questions from members of the committee? Mr. Estes.
Motion to acknowledge.
Motion by Brad and a second by Charity. When would you expect to maybe bring this back upon the discussion of Parks and Rec? You'll bring it back on the agenda when it's appropriate?
I will, yes.
You don't need us to set a date?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Any other further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Next item on our item is the Mountain Pine Beetle Program update, and Mr. Gary Garner, please.
I'm Gary Gardner. I'm the urban forester with Parks and Recreation. You've seen me here before. Just to give a very brief update as to what transpired within Rapid City this year relative to mountain pine beetle. We did conduct our inspections for private landowners, as we have been doing for the last, I guess, 4 years now, I think. And the numbers are similar. But we're still seeing some pink marked trees. We're still seeing some trees with sap oozing out of them. In the October till present time, I guess, most of these were done last October. We inspected 317 parcels within the city, identified 110 trees that were infested with mountain pine beetle, and that's on about 1,200 acres. This is all private land. This doesn't include any of the city-owned parcels. We did have a few trees like in the Skyline Wilderness areas, but the numbers are fairly small. The cost share authorized for the removal of those trees is generally $150 a tree, although there's some exceptions to that, just based on how the trees are removed. There's about $13,000 in cost share that was authorized in this year's program. Not all that's been paid out yet, because some of the trees are still being taken out. Doing those inspections, I personally put on just a little over 100 miles walking around yards, so it is a lot of walking, but it's I guess it's good for my health too. So the other aspect of our urban interface management plan, and Tim Weaver's going to touch on some of this, and some of the numbers may not exactly coincide, because I kind of looked at it from just 2014 till the end of the year. There were 77 landowners that received cost share from the city of Rapid City. Tim, may have worked with others that received only state funding. Treated 490 acres and spent just under $100,000 of city dollars to those 77 landowners to remove hazardous fuels. Most of these numbers are consistent with last year. I think we may see a slight increase in the mountain pine beetle activity as we've, annexed Countryside. We're starting to move it a little bit closer to the more the larger forest, I guess if you will. There's larger trees which are more susceptible to pine beetle. Just in the last week, we've done some inspections out there because that area was newly annexed, and we need to get that area taken care of. That's all I have. If you have questions, I'll try to answer them.
Any questions of Gary by members of the committee? Just stand by, Gary, in case something evolves from this. It's all right with the committee. We'll move ahead and have the update on the survival space by Tim Weaver. They're all interrelated. So, Tim, the Rapid City Fire Department. All right. If you want to take action on item number 41 at this time, acknowledge the approved or whatever you want to do. Moved by John, seconded by Brad to acknowledge the report by Gary. Okay. Gary, Brad has a question for you, if you wouldn't mind. Excuse me, Tim.
Thank you for the report. I just had seen two numbers, and I'm trying to, on the very last slide, it said there was like $98,000 distributed amongst, I think, 77 landowners. And then on the slide before that, there was a $13,000 figure.
Okay.
Help me sort those two out,
Okay.
please.
The $13,000 is the amount authorized to remove individual trees on a private property that was infested with mountain pine beetles. So we provide cost share where if they have one tree in their yard, we help them get that tree out that has mountain pine beetle. The $98,000 is money paid when a person enrolls in a program through the fire department and has their property thinned and to reduce the fire hazard on that property. They get state money. They can also get some city dollars. There are mountain pine beetle trees that get taken out, as part of that, but that's the $98,000 is more in the area of hazardous fuel mitigation and not mountain pine beetle necessarily.
Thank you. I have a motion before us to acknowledge the Pine Beetle report. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Gary. Tim, I'm sorry. Now it's your turn.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Tim Weaver. I'm with the Rapid City Fire Department. And my job is to kind of manage this survival space initiative we started in 2011. I'm just going to give you an update. I know I've given you guys an update on this before, but it's been a little while since we've been here. So I'm just going to kind of show you some stuff that we've been doing since then. What we're really talking about is fuel mitigation on private landowners' properties and, in some respects, city-owned property and some commercial properties. And primarily they're located within this red zone that's shown on this map. We've identified this zone as our primary hazard zone in the wild and urban interface inside the city limits of Rapid City. The yellow area that you see there is our secondary zone, our ember zone, which in effect means that if there's a major wildland fire in the red zone, burning embers can be landing anywhere in the yellow zone. We've gone out 3/4 of a mile, which is conservative. Chances are the embers will travel farther than that, but if I went out a mile, the whole map would be yellow. So it looks nicer this way. Some of the things were basically the real issue of why we're conducting these programs, really, and they're kind of laid out there. There's definitely natural conditions in this area that predispose the vegetation in the Black Hills area in western South Dakota to burn. Even if it's been thinned, this area wants to have fire on it, and so even if we've got thinning projects complete, we should primarily have surface fire on the ground within about a 10-year cycle. We obviously interrupt that cycle through our activities. And there's still a large percentage, really the majority of the homes that are in the wild and urban interface of Rapid City that are not prepared for fire to come visit. We're making a lot of great progress, but we're just tipping the iceberg, really. And memories are short, and most of the perception of homeowners and their view of fire response and how that will affect their property in a major wildland fire incident really are not lined up with reality. And this little cartoon sums it up pretty nicely. A lot of people, don't want to think about the worst that can happen, and our job is to kind of see what we can do to help mitigate that. And this is obviously what we're trying to avoid. Two major fires in Colorado the last few years. This is the Waldo Canyon fire. 347 houses burned to the ground. You can see that neighborhood is pretty typical of what you might find in our areas of Rapid City. This is the Black Forest fire, which happened a year later. Pretty good fire activity there. And if you take a look at the main fuel type, it's pretty much right outside the door. Gary's numbers are a little bit different than mine in these figures. He may have combined a couple of years, but in retrospect, that's kind of how it goes. We're both kind of keeping track of different numbers, so to speak. But this is kind of a rundown briefly. There's a lot of information on there, but kind of what we've done over the last few years. And this is primarily just the 50/50 program progress. And that's basically the private landowners part of the initiative, that program. And that's primarily done through state funds and city funds. And this, again, a lot of information. I can let you guys read that, but this is basically what we're managing as far as grant programs through the initiative in the city. In 2014, we've got some new programs coming online that were just awarded last year. And we do have some new stuff that was awarded last year, and we'll be receiving that money in 2015. It consists of programs from the BLM, which primarily funds our veterans fuel mitigation program, the Western States Fire Managers grants, which are federal money, which is funneled through the State Wildland Fire Division, and we do have some FEMA grants in the mix as well for areas like Springbrook Acres, and we're planning on some more projects in the future. The gist of it really is at that bottom number. We're managing around just about $3 million worth of grant-funded projects in the city right now. And that's just for wildland fire mitigation, and in turn, a lot of mountain pine beetle work as well. We'll kind of just show you some projects. I know you guys like maps, so I included quite a few in here. And pictures. This is the Chapel Lane Firewise community. They just became a Firewise community, and they just got done completing their main project, and that would be on the right side of the screen, that large green area. That's about 20 acres. We just did a fuel reduction project on that. Just completed that actually this week. So they, as part of being a Firewise community, address their common area that they have owned through the homeowner association. And that common area affected not only constituents within their development, but also on top of the hillside in Carriage Hills. They realized that their property was affecting a lot of private land on top there. And so they took it upon themselves to mitigate that property at a significant expense to them. We helped them with some grant funds, but their total out of pocket still was probably pushing about $9,000 or $10,000. The areas in the green on the top of that picture, towards the, I guess would be west, are fuel mitigation projects that we did through Chapel Valley Homeowner Association, and those were done in 2012. So we're making some good progress in that valley right there. And they are doing these projects, and that Firewise community, here's some before and after pictures. They're addressing their issues they have with emergency response that they addressed a few years ago as well, so that's good that they're taking this step. FEMA, this is an HMD grant or HMGP grant, which is a mitigation hazard grant through FEMA, and this project was in the Springbrook Acres common area. They own about 80 acres, which is very steep terrain, rugged terrains, very heavily wooded. And what we did on this project is we used FEMA money and broke it up into sections that aligned up directly adjacent to private landowners' properties in close proximity to their structures. So that's why it looks like it's kind of spread about a bit, but that's what we did. And you can kind of see the forest, and you can get an idea of the steepness of the ground too. It doesn't really do it justice, it's very steep. But that's pretty much what it looked like before we started, and that bottom picture is how far we opened it up just to mitigate that steep fire threat. So we helped out. I think we've got actually 11 landowners that we help protect directly adjacently to their property. And we hope to expand on these projects in the future with more fuel reduction activities to maybe bite off a bigger chunk inside there. That's a big, mean animal in there, and if we get a fire in there, it's not going to be very fun, I can tell you that. This is a Skyline Drive Wilderness Area project, which we have going on right now. This is also a Western States Fire Manager's grant project. It's about 70 acres. We're addressing heavy fuel loading from wildland fire and pine beetle infestations in there. This is all city property. We own all that stuff up there, and so we're trying to be good stewards and make sure that we get it thinned out, keep on top of the pine beetle problem up in there. Gary does a great job with that. Obviously, those pine beetle trees, if we discover them in there during this project, come out with that. And with this project, we work pretty closely with the Parks Department. Gary was pretty instrumental in trying to figure out how to treat the forests in there, and there's areas in there that we're trying to get back to more of a hardwood stand type situation. The pine trees are encroaching a lot of those areas, and so we're trying to mitigate most of those pine trees to kind of get the oaks and the aspens and the ash. I think there's several other species of trees in there that we're trying to get a stronger foothold in the environment in there, and all those species of trees are of course more fire resistant than pine trees, so that's kind of our goal. Here's some after pictures kind of in that Florman Drive area after we were done thinning. This is on the western slope of Skyline Drive in the southernmost section there, which if you look at that farthest south piece, that in the blue on the left side, that's what this area is. This is looking towards the stand on a trail that we have not thinned yet, and this is looking back the other direction after we were done. So you can see quite a difference there. These steep areas on the western slope, we did have to use hand piles, so we will have to burn those next winter if we get any snow, but that's a future part of this project. This is also on the western slope closer to Dinosaur Park. Some before and after. You know, a picture like this invites pretty explosive fire behavior, so we're kind of glad we're getting this done here. They're incinerating most of the material when we can through a machine like this, which is an air curtain burner, and they're using various methods right now. We've had conditions lately that aren't really helping us out as far as being able to use this machine. So we're scrambling to find other methods to get rid of it. They're probably going to be taking a lot of it to our landfill, which is a great resource, actually. But when we can, we're going to incinerate most of this material through this air curtain burner. I know I'm running through a lot of stuff here, so I'll be here for questions when you guys are done. This is our Rapid City Veterans Wildfire Mitigation Program. These guys we employ through this program through the BLM. They're all veterans, transitioning veterans. Most of these guys are veterans of the Iraq War or the recent conflicts we're in. It's a nationally recognized program. A lot of people are taking notice of this program, and they do a lot of great work around the city on both private property and city property. We've had both two of our representatives out here, Senator Thune and Christine Elm, at various times. They were both out here last year. They both toured the properties and have taken an interest in this program, mainly because of the fact that we're employing veterans and giving them help, and in return we get property mitigated around Rapid City, which is really a win-win. Some before and after stuff. This is kind of stuff that they've done. And all these properties, this is by Cedar Drive. There's a vast tract of land that's really government property that directly abuts several of Rapid City neighborhoods. And we're just trying to give a buffer to these neighborhoods so in case there is a fire, we have some breathing room. This GIS map shows essentially what we did. The blue area was phase 1, the yellow area was phase 2. That's roughly about 13 acres of property that we did, and you can kind of see how far we pushed off those neighborhoods, which are in green and yellow. So if we have a major fire coming from the west, that's going to help us out quite a bit. There's some more before, or these are both after pictures. And you can kind of see that we're trying to leave it in a natural state that would be if we had basically regular fire intervals on the ground that weren't interrupted by us. So this is by Kingswood subdivision. All the areas in blue crosshatch are areas that we have done. Kingswood is in a similar situation as the Cedar Drive neighborhood. The purple area was done in conjunction with NWE Management. We contracted with them to hire a contractor to thin that. We skirted the outside of that. That was all done through our wildfire mitigation program and the City Urban Interface Management Plan. Gary had a big integral role in getting that particular piece of this project completed especially. And so we're complementing that all the way around Kingswood subdivision. And so because of our efforts, they're in a much better position. The areas in green are private landowners who have done their own fuel mitigation projects. And so we're complementing their work as well. And here's some after pictures around Kingswood. And we're also doing smaller parcels. This is a recent little piece right off Pineview Drive next to Park Drive, which is a city-owned right-of-way that apparently nobody knew existed. And so we found this thing, and I went and looked at it and thought, holy cow, we better do something here. So this is what it looked like before. You know, heavily damaged by Storm Atlas, directly adjacent to several property owners, their property and their structures. And this was city-owned property. And so we went in there and cleaned this up. This is kind of a before and after. You can see the house behind there. And they're working in there actually today as we speak. And so this is kind of the after. By the time we cleaned up the storm damage and the real big mess in there, there really wasn't many trees left, but we did leave some. They're accomplishing this work with equipment we purchased last year. And I'll let you guys kind of read through those numbers. We've done about 63 acres around Rapid City and in Rapid City with these guys. And we've affected directly about $30 million in property. Is our best guess as far as if we had a major fire and those property were lost due to fire behavior from that unmitigated property, that value is actually over $30 million. That's a little conservative. So the money we spent, $7,000 annually, $7,000 to $10,000 annually to manage that equipment through the BLM grant funds, and the purchase price, you know, you can see that if the turnaround is $30 million, it's money well spent ahead of the game. And this is some pictures of some of the equipment we purchased. That's a skid steer loader with a masticating head on it, which really cuts down a lot of time. 13-inch chipper, which has been great. And we do have a truck that we use to haul the equipment, and it's a 10-yard forestry truck that we use to blow the chips into when we need to. So we've had a lot of great progress. We'd like to keep these projects moving forward, obviously, keep them funded. There's more stuff to come. We've got a project in the works for Cowboy Hill that actually was approved. We're waiting for the grant funds to be awarded. Lots of city-owned property left to treat. We've got a lot of private landowner projects that are on the work still, and of course the mountain pine beetle and the Ips beetle never rest. I'm sure Gary's been out looking at his shirt the last few days, seeing about 30 or 40,000 Ips beetles on his shirt, so they're out today. Today or yesterday is when I think they started flying. So if you have a big mustache like me, it used to be kind of a pain for those little bugs. So it's vital for ongoing maintenance. Pine beetle annual infestations, of course. Storm damage from Atlas is really, you know, we think we're on the downhill stretch of that, but that's still everywhere. And so the wildfires will always return, and so will the beetles. So if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Members of the committee, Brad.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to acknowledge and like to keep the floor if I could.
Certainly. Go ahead. It's second by John. Go ahead, Brad.
First of all, Tim and Gary, what great programs, and I applaud every part of it, the veterans aspect and the success that you've had getting the grant funds and such. So I see some of that land you do hand piles, and some of it you have that incinerator type thing. Is there ever any marketable timber that comes out of these projects?
A lot of that material, in fact, in the Skyline Drive project, their goal is to remove about 30% of the timber on the steeper parts where they had to hand pile. I don't think they made that number, but they attempted to get a lot of that wood out to products other than lumber mill. They basically make post and pole material. In the rest of the project, I would say 70 to 80% of the logs coming out of that project in the bowl area of Skyline Drive Wilderness and most of that other area, they are stacking that, and they will be hauling that out. And as far as the other projects, most of the homeowner projects that do wildland fire mitigation, a lot of those contractors do get that material to the biofuels plant outside of city, or they take it to the sawmill, the other sawmill around here for products other than lumber. The mountain pine beetle logs, no, we get rid of those because we don't want to cause any more issues with them. So they're typically hauled to the landfill and either ground or, not sure what else Carl does with those big things, but we send some big ones out there. So, so yeah, a lot of it is utilized, sure.
Okay, thank you. I just was curious. You know what, I know there's, on the front end of these projects, there's a little anxiety, you know, when we were talking about this program a year or so ago and with the private landowners, there's a little anxiety about getting a governmental agency on their property. And but on the backside, I know that every private landowner that I've talked to that has gotten involved with this project, the outcome has been very positive. So anyway, I'm happy with the approach that we're using right now and the benefits and everything. And I applaud both the mountain pine beetle and the wildland mitigation. Thanks.
And both these projects too, it's important to note too that they go hand in hand. I mean, if you mitigate a property for mountain pine beetle management and you mitigate a property as far as tree spacing for wildland fire, they're pretty much identical. And both these programs are run, you know, with both the Parks Department and the Fire Department. The Veterans Program, we're running out of the Parks Department shop and their maintenance crew, and so it's a great actual story of departments working together, coming together for a common cause, and it's actually been working out really well. So,
Tim, did you have something to add?
Thank you. Tim did a great job of explaining the program and everything, and the one thing that he did leave out is that he was just returned from Reno, Nevada last week, on Friday, and was a recipient of a national award, innovation award, for the efforts of the Veterans Program. And that was in concurrence or in associated with Jerry Durr with Sturgis or Meade County.
Meade County.
And Travis Lip, which heads up the BLM program, so it's a cooperative effort. And definitely that award is really to the credit of the cooperative effort with the Parks Department and the Fire Department. It truly is recognized nationally for its efforts and its accomplishments, and Rapid City should be very proud of that. It's one of the most prestigious awards you can obtain in the wildland arena like this. So, thank you.
Other members of the committee? If I might, I want to address some things. Because of our extreme fire danger that we're witnessing so far, and clouds don't look like they're coming in very fast, I'm going to ask that this presentation both be given Monday night, and let's do what we can to draw attention either through some kind of a press release, either through fire and parks, to emphasize the need to work on this because we do have a severe danger. I know that you talked about the Colorado fire. There was a couple of weeks ago, there was the report on, or that movie on, or not movie, report on the San Diego fires. I think that we have done a good job in the last few years, but we need to do more, and it's extremely high risk, and the better we can do for our community, we should heighten the awareness. And I think you're right. It is an excellent example of a discussion that started about 4 years ago where we were talking about pine beetles that started moving into, well, let's work together, and I think it's worked out to be a tremendously good program and something the city can be proud of, fire and parks and everybody. One question I have, where are we on money? We had, I think, originally $350,000 set aside for pine beetle and wildland mitigation match, and where are we now? Because I don't think we've ever supplemented it, have we? Or I think the council needs to know, are we going to need money soon, or?
Well, I think we're in good shape right now, although it could be, as Gary alluded, that Ips beetle is showing its face a little more prevalently now, and that could increase our need for additional funding. But I think as of right now, we're in pretty good shape with our budget.
What I would like to see Monday night then is a summary of, what was originally budgeted and allocated by the city, and how much is spent per year in pine beetle and fire, and where we are in the balance, so we're kind of prepared, okay?
Sure.
Fair?
Yep.
Any other questions from the council? Not? Good job. See you Monday night. I'll pull it off the agenda if I mean, we need to hear from you. Good job. Anything else? You want a motion to acknowledge the report? I made one. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. See you Monday night.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Brad and seconded by Charity to adjourn. In discussion, those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody objecting? We're adjourned. Thank you for your time. Good job, guys.